And welcome back to the program. You're watching Our Town, and now in studio with us, joining us is Chiefs Christine Deom-Zachary and Gina, and today we're going to be discussing some of the issues surrounding tobacco in the community lately. And with that, ladies, welcome to studio.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So from what I understand, last November 19th, last Tuesday, there was a meeting that was held at the Knights of Columbus. How did that go? What was the overall feeling once the evening was over?
Once the evening was over, if I can just start off, I felt exuberant. I was amazed that it had happened the way it did. I thought people were really, really enthusiastic. I sensed that from people. There were people with objections to the question that had been stated, and yet I found so much energy, things that had to be worked on, things that would mean an awful lot of work in the future. So it was good that way. You know how sometimes something happens and you just feel so energetic and energized? Well, things have changed since that day, but...
Yeah, I would imagine. I attended the tobacco meeting on this past Monday, actually, but in the meantime, from Tuesday to Monday, there was a lot of talk, I guess, out there in the community, whether it was at the local coffee shop or even via Facebook. You can gauge a lot of things that are going on when you're not in the same room anymore, which is amazing, you know. So there was a lot of talk about the press release, about the consensus. The word consensus was reached, seemed to bother a lot of people. But on Monday at the tobacco meeting that I attended, there was more of a support still to have regulation in place, some sort of regulation. So when you say consensus, was it meant for that there was a consensus among the tobacco industry that there is a need for regulation? Would you say that?
The word consensus, first of all, is something that requires a lot of thinking by a lot of people. For the CDMP process,
right,
we note how consensus can happen in a crowd, in one of the groups, for instance, and sometimes you get a lot of objection in a group, but at the end of the night you'll find that, let's say there are 15 people in a group, you'll find that 12 people are in agreement, 3 are not. And I remember one of the elders saying that it doesn't mean that everyone's 100% behind something, but that there's a sizable number of people. And you know, from that Tuesday night meeting, I gathered that there was a big majority. You know, and some people who didn't have access to or hadn't gotten a copy of the draft regulations that were spoken of by the proponent, and that was Lionel Deere, who made the opening statements and introduced what was going to be happening that evening. So basically there were about, I think, 7 to 12 people who did not have a copy, put up their hand and said they wanted to read the draft to begin with. And also, I guess, the statement as well.
So what happened, since the Tuesday night meeting? Has there been any changes, or are people still moving towards going through and supporting the CDMP process at this point?
And if I could just add a little bit more, and then Gina, if you'll take the rest. The statement that was read by Lionel Deere, who is the proponent of this regulation for tobacco, I found in there that basically they agree that the work that has been done over the past 13 to 15 years, with all of the fights that happened and all of the breakups, and till finally they've come out with the 2012 March, 2013, actually, I'm wrong about that.
And that's the draft that you're referring to?
That's the one that they've agreed to move forward with. Doesn't mean it's perfect.
It's a working document.
It means that it's going to have to be worked on. It's a working document. So they're using that as their beginning, and they say they want to go through the CDMP process.
That's what I kind of got from the Monday meeting also, that there was more people who wanted to see it be regulated through that process than not. So,
so basically they said in their letter again, in their statement, they said that they would be putting their application in for the CDMP.
There was also some discussion now around the fact that type 1 or type 2. Type 1 being
Yes.
that it can go through hearings and people can take part in it, as
Yes,
opposed to
yeah.
type 2 where it's just read and developed on the inside. Could you differentiate? Because there were some people that were saying, well, if it's type 2, I'm not, we're going to change it back to a type 1. Otherwise, we're not doing it.
I'll tell you.
Just to kind of explain what that is.
I would just add, sorry, Gina.
It's okay, proceed.
It's just that in terms of type 1 or type 2, there has to be, from the Kahnawake Legislative Coordinating Committee, there has to be a decision, a legal opinion made about what kind of legislation it's going to be. Now, it might come out as a type 2 legislation. And nowhere does it mean, between type 1 and type 2, that people won't have the ability to work on this.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone will have a copy of the draft and pick it apart section by section, the way we do right now for the Election Act hearings,
Mm-hmm.
the membership law hearings. Or the Justice Act hearing. That went actually by clause all the way
Mm-hmm.
through with discussion until everyone agreed with one clause. We're in
And
agreement.
then the group would move
then-
forward, and
Yes.
people sat in group 1, 2, 3, depending
Exactly.
on how many people were
Yeah.
there. Okay.
Yeah.
So
Well, I
I'm
think-
wondering where that fear comes from. Sorry, go ahead.
No, actually, I was going to ask you, Gina, when you came into the meeting, because you've certainly been one of the main spokespeople, is this your portfolio, if you don't mind me asking?
Yes, it is.
As the portfolio holder for turning these regulations into something that's more palatable for the community, what's been the biggest obstacle that you've seen? Because certainly you're dealing with a lot of different people from different factions, different areas. What's been some of the challenges in working this?
Well, it's the
portfolio?
people themselves and the issues that they have with MCK. The lack of trust. I got involved in the portfolio, not as the lead, but it just kind of came out that I ended up being more available to the public
Right.
and to the manufacturers and able to meet with them. So I kind of took the lead from there. It's the people themselves, though. It's just a lack of trust and the accusations of MCK wanting to, get dollars. And, the reality is if MCK wanted to get dollars, they would have moved this a long time ago. It's not about dollars. This is about saving the people and saving the industry, because people are being criminalized through the whole process. What is happening now is laws are being created to ensure that people do jail time.
And
on
that's
top.
the C10 law
That-
that you're making reference to?
Exactly.
Which moves it into the criminal code, whereas before it was in tax evasion and it was...
It fell
under the
Custom and
tax,
Excise Act.
yeah.
Yes, and now it's a criminal code offense. What has happened now, is the people came to MCK. It's not initiated by MCK. This was initiated by manufacturers who came to MCK saying, we need some help and we need to do something about what's happening to the people. So MCK got involved again.
Speaking of the people, there's certainly been a lot of different court cases in the past that has criminalized a lot of people by exercising their rights, and certainly one of the most notable cases was the $10 million case that stemmed about 3 years ago, and there hasn't been much talk about that particular case. Are you going to take that umbrella and try to help cases from, say, 2 to 3 years past within some of the regulations?
At this point, we can't go backwards. We have to go forwards. There's so much to do in front of us right now. I couldn't even imagine, trying to go backwards. But the issue here is that the people want the process to go through CDMP, which is entirely different than MCK heading the project. The people want to head the project and be in charge, and that is fine. The whole meeting that MCK called was to gauge the view of the community. And at that meeting, the manufacturers made a statement and asked for the support of the community to have the mandate to move forward. And this is their initiative. We're here to support them. So whatever this process is and how it turns out, it's beyond our control, because as we all know that the typing or categorization of this CDMP process is not in the hands of MCK. So that is going to be explained to the tobacco group by Gahande Horn-Miller, who will be setting up a meeting and explain the entire process so that they're clear on the process that they're using. Also, the Tobacco Working Group had submitted the regulation for categorization, and the categorization was 2. And I know that the community said they're not happy, you know, if it's going to be categorized as 2. Well, us as a working group, we're not satisfied with that. And we met with legal and we discussed it, but it was in the best interest of moving this forward. And this is something that needs to be moved forward fairly quickly, because the S10, I'm sorry, C16, because they keep changing the
the title.
The titles,
Yeah.
So has already passed, you know, reading, and there's one more reading left, and there's a standing committee that will take place December 5th, I believe, is the
Friday.
date that we have.
Yeah.
Yes.
Next week.
So we've been given short notice
Yesterday.
to appear. Yes, and you know, things are moving very, very quickly. So after the holidays, you know, one of the fears was we were panicking and creating regulations too quickly, and that, you know, this law may not pass. But I said, you know what, we're not going to make it. This law will pass before we have this together.
Right.
That's a
And I
reality.
think that they discussed that at the meeting that had taken place on Monday, and there was also some fear about the type of law, and I think sometimes people not understanding the difference between the two, and maybe, you know, some misinformation can cause some of that. But still, there was, I think, to a certain degree, you know, she's right in terms of it being coming from the inside, because they did talk about, well, you know, we need to take care of our house first and then worry about outside governments, and again, you know, somebody brought up the fact that, and I'm sure you must have heard all of this by now, you know, in terms of the tobacco industry itself trying to work through some of their issues. And, you know, history repeating itself. Somebody's saying, well, you know, we tried to do this last year at the retail level and the pyramid wasn't followed, and so on and so forth. And now it's the manufacturers that want to do it, and now it's okay. And so these are some of the things, I think, that create that constant fear, or the issues that they have among, you know, in the industry. And how do we move forward as a community? Because they talked about also having a community vote and then a tobacco industry vote. And
Well,
is that even possible?
I'm always in for a community vote, because whatever people decide in this community at one point or another affects everybody. So I am actually in favor of community votes over CDMP process. Not enough people participate in the CDMP process, and a lot of people do participate in voting. So it gives us a better view of what the community wants and the direction. So for me, I'm all for that. And I told Lionel Deere Jr. that I will help in any way. You know, if they want to take the lead on this, I'm for it. It's led by the people, for the people, that's fine. I'm here to help in any way that I can. I told them, just let me know where you want me to assist. In the meantime, I said I would continue with other chiefs that are also looking at regulations, because this is not a Kahnawake issue. You know, all the First Nations involved in tobacco are all scrambling at this point to do something. And you know what, we've had some meetings, and I'm going to continue to meet with them and try and do something on a more political level with the government. Instead of just sitting back waiting for regulations to happen here, I will try and continue to work on a different front.
Right. Very quickly, we have 2 minutes and we have to wrap it up.
Very, very quickly. For the both of you guys, I just wanted to ask you, with other cigarette dealers that already made their deals with Quebec, with signing with Quebec, with adhering to their laws, is there a way for them to be umbrellaed under the existing laws that the community of Kahnawake is going to be putting together?
You mean people with the licenses? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah. That's what I meant,
There's only one license as far as I know in Kahnawake now. Nobody has the licenses anymore. They've all given them up.
Okay.
And the other thing is that we're not there yet. First of all, the community has to decide what their regulations are going to be. Then we have to really promote what is going to be our structure and how we see this regulation as an organized community.
Right.
Because we cannot just be all over the board on this. There has to be consistency. We have to be able to say, well, we're going to do this, we're going to have to do it and follow through. We can't always be all over the place. It does us no good, really.
Right.
So with that, is there anything else that either of you feel is important to add at this point?
Well, I'll just add this. I really think it's so important to be unified on any issue. We have to find our way past petty differences and decide what we can do for the benefit of the community. We have to get over the way we've always, as you described it earlier on, that we've always maintained our rivalries and we can't seem to get over it. You were talking about that earlier. But I think for some things we have to start really coming together and be unified on our positions. It makes us stronger.
One important thing to mention is on Friday, we will be withdrawing the letter that we submitted for categorization of the regulations from MCK, and we will have it open so that the people can do it themselves.
Great. Okay. Lance?
Thank you so much, guys, for coming in. I really appreciate it. A little bit more insight as to what's going on with this, and keep us posted. It's very interesting. Very interesting.
Thanks for having us here.
You're more than welcome. We're going to return back with Our Town right here on Mock TV.